William Murray, or Bill Murray, a chess legend in Minnesota for almost 70 years. You see, he goes by a certain reputation, and that is known as Mr. Endgame, okay? Like, here's a clipping right here from a newspaper. And I was facing him in the final round of my Roger Hall tournament, and, well, let's just say he played with an 89% in the endgame, and I played with a 96. See how I did it. When you're facing a chess legend called Mr. Endgame, you really have to play in a very unique style. And so I decided, you know what? I think I'm pretty good at endgames. Like online, I know I mentioned this in the video versus Paul, but I'm like, I feel pretty good. So my game plan going into this was to assert my dominance, and pretty much I'm saying I've been playing so like good this tournament, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna beat you at what you're good at. So I'm like, okay, let's just trade off everything and let's get out of theory. So c4, as expected, and then he played d6, and I heard that he pretty much that against literally because I was half in mind when I was thinking about what I wanted to play against literally e4 d against e4 d4 and c4. He just plays d6 no matter what. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I might as well play what I know, and we get this sort of Dutch. It's called the Anglo-Dutch. The Dutch is usually when I play d4 and they play f5, and traditionally you get this really closed structure, but I went for this more open line. I actually did come up with this on the spot because in the game I've prepped beforehand. I've prepped b4 and knight f3, but f4 I'm like, you know what? It seems interesting, and this is when he already started thinking. Like at this point, he already spent like a 10-minute thinking. I'm like, okay, I have him exactly where I want him, which is in the opening. Not going into something super theoretical, not going into something weird. Just playing like normal chess. He castled, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I have a really crazy idea here. Okay, I'm like, what if I just explode the center? And so I went e4, and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, yeah, this is dumb. I'm really tired after the previous 4 games. So I wasn't trying to think too much in this game. I was like, you know what? Let's just pretty much say, yeah, blow everything open. Let's get this little pawn cube. He played c6 after a while, and then I'm like, you know what I can do? I'm gonna take here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're already seeing it, and just wait. It gets better. It gets better. So my reasoning for taking was I wanted to make shit weird. Like I'm not even kidding. Like I'm thinking in the game, I'm like I want to make this the most complicated game because he's a way older gentleman, and they're way less strong tactically. Just as you get older, you like kids super strong tactically. Older people usually get like slow positional games. So I said, let's get chaos. I don't care if I'm losing. I don't care if I'm exhausted and I can barely think straight. I'm gonna play fast and I want to play complicated stuff, and we're gonna see what happens. So he checks me. I move my king, and then knight g4 as a strong, and I find this little maneuver here. Pawn to d4. Point being, I mean, obviously his threat if I just like do nothing is knight here, and it's pretty crushing. Actually, the computer says f4 first. But no, d4, and then after he takes this little move, this little in-between move, h3, everything is hanging, and already his best move here is pretty clearly take this, but he thought for like 20 minutes and went here, and I'm like, okay, I spooked him. So knight a4, chasing his bishop away. He took in the center. We swapped off a pair of rooks, and I got a pawn back. And then pretty much we got this position, and after he took here, I'm like, okay, I got what I wanted. I'm down 2 pawns, but I have some good bishops, and I'm like, okay, we've reached the end game, traded off queens, and I'm like, now we're going to make something happen. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to play really fast. I'm going to play some strong endgame maneuvers. So I play b3, looking to put my bishop here with tempo. His knight moves back, and now I put my bishop here. I pretty much say, nah, I want to keep getting tempo, and I'm not entirely certain what my plan was at this point. Again, I wasn't really calculating. So if I go through this recap quicker, it's because I was barely thinking this game. Like, if I show you my score sheet from the game itself, on this move, bishop f5, bishop f4, I spent 10 seconds, and at this point, he had 39 minutes on his clock, and I had 60. So I was already up like 21 minutes on him at this point in the game. And I mean, he's completely winning, granted, but you know, it was an advantage. So he puts his knight here, pretty logical, looking to reroute. And then I'm thinking a bit, and I'm like, okay, my knight on a4 is kind of dumb, and I wasn't entirely certain where he thought his knight could go. So I'm like, okay, just go knight c3. So he goes knight d5, and then I'm like, okay. So here the computer wants me to take this, which I did take note of, but I was thinking after takes, I didn't see how I could further make threats. Like maybe I would have knight b5, but I never really saw how I could get to these pawns, and it just felt like my bishop's staring into a brick wall. And my whole thought process in this endgame is I need to keep the space open so I can use my bishop pair, and I need to win back this pawn. At the very least, if I'm down one pawn, I can draw. So that was my goal, win the pawn and keep everything open. So I moved my bishop back, and e3 is his best move here, but I was thinking that after bishop e1, something like knight g7 to move here, and then g4 to restrict the bishop. I'm like, yeah, seems reasonable, but at some point we're going to just double take here, and then I'm going to bring my king in and my rook in, and all I need is that one pawn, okay? If I can get, because you see what I realized in the endgame, what I came to realize pretty quickly, and what I had known like pretty intuitively at this point, because I think that I have a good intuition for endgames, and I don't study them too much, but I have a bit. But no, I felt that I had a good intuition, so I'm like, okay, I feel that I need to be as active as possible if I want to draw or win this. So he goes bishop d7, rook e1, looking to get back his pawn again. I just need to get one pawn. Pawn to c5. Computer says it's the best move, but I just thought it just opened up my bishop long term, and so I'm like, wait a minute. After I go back to c2, I'm blockading and winning this pawn. It's already gone from -3 to -1, so I'm doing great here. He guards the pawn, I take, and then he brings his king. And then we reach about here, and then I was like, okay, I'm a pawn down, so it's not exactly ideal, but activity is exactly what matters. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to continue being active? And I found this really, in my opinion, this really smart move, rook e2. So rook e2 is a really strong maneuver that, as you saw, like the evaluation, literally it thought it was -1.3, but it's actually -1.1, because the computer didn't initially realize how strong my move was, which I just find kind of fun, you know, kind of make me feel good. And yeah, the computer, after quite a bit of thinking, finds as the best move. So I outthought the computer here, which, you know, light work. It's not easy being this good at I'm just kidding. Rook e2. So you may be asking, okay, well, why is it such a smart move? Well, it's all about activity in this endgame. We don't have many pieces, and my rook, it looks like it's really good here in the center, and it's cutting off the king, which is exactly what I want. But his plan is very clearly to go here. Like, he's bringing his king out to trade off my active rook. So I'm prophylactically moving my rook back so that now, after, well, if you were to go rook d8, I was planning something like rook f2, king g8, because he can't move away from these pawns, and then I was probably just going to go like king g2, and then I was like, I'm fine here. Like his pieces just aren't really doing much. This knight's completely restricted. I have a really good bishop, and I'm gonna figure out the knight situation. But I was half in mind to bring it over here. So yeah, rook e2. He attacks a pawn. I check him first. I checked him first instead of immediately going king g2 because I wanted to make his king go back. So after I go here, I was thinking that he can't really go back here because then I just go king g2 and I pick up this pawn. And I figured anything would be too passive, so after he moves back to g8, which I just thought was pretty much forced, and I go to g2, the improvement is that now I pretty much just said your little maneuver a couple moves back actually wasted. So 3 moves ago when you went king f7, at this point I'm like, okay, well, I'm arguing that you just wasted your move there. And in fact, I am slowly improving all my pieces, as the eval agrees. So he offers a rook trade. Obviously, I'm gonna say no. I need pieces on the board for activity. That's the name of the end game. The name of the name of the end game is activity, 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 and already it's back to a draw. I'm down a pawn and it is straight up drawn, and the reason is that I have more than enough compensation for a pawn. So I have this really nice potential pressure. So he can't just go here to trade off this really good bishop yet, and a lot of stuff. And there's maybe ideas of some discoveries of some like discovered attacks. My bishop ever moves, as you'll see. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go knight a3. I'm looking to put my knight here, and I was thinking he probably just goes bishop c7, and then I bring my knight somewhere here, and I'm just slowly improving all my pieces. So bishop c7, offering a rook trade, and the computer here actually says to trade rooks, but my thought process was that after takes and then knight b5, I was thinking a6, knight d6. I have really good activity, but after something like b6, I'm like, I don't understand why I'm simply playing without this really good rook that I have, because as far as I was concerned, intuitively, I thought I needed to keep the rooks on the board, and my reasoning for keeping the rooks on the board is because I know that rook endgames are usually the most drawn. So at this point in the game, I'm like, okay, I generally need to just, keep some rooks on the board, keep other pieces on the board, and just be very smart about my trades. So I went rook e2, and this just fails to a tactic, which is bishop takes g3, which I just missed. So he's back to being up 2 pawns, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to take it. It's a very smart move. In fact, he manages to sacrifice multiple pieces to get these pawns. So I took. He checks, winning back the bishop, and I thought, you know what? Let's full on just gangster mode, bring my king up here, and the advantage is back. But after the rook takes, knight b5, and he moves, I gain a pawn, so it's back to being -1, and his knight physically can't move anywhere. So he sacrifices his rook as well. A neat little trick. Point being, if I take, he goes here. So I'm not going to take that. So what I did is I pressured his pawn immediately. He checked me. I moved, and then he guarded the pawn. Very strong maneuver. Like he's clearly extremely good at endgames. I don't know if I would say he's better than me, but he's very good at endgames, or at least he used to be back in his prime. So knight to c8. My plan is to go here, and I literally just need to win one of these pawns. Again, the goal of the endgame, only be down 1 pawn. So he goes here. I attack his pawn. Not complicated. He moves it. I attack the rook and the pawn. He guards it, and I bring my rook in. I pretty much say, okay, we're going to go here and here, and all I need to do is be down 1 pawn, because there's a rule in the endgame. And more or less, which is that if my king is on the same side as his king, and we both have pawns racing, his king needs to go over and stop mine, because his knight can't hold it down. A rook can hold down 2 passed pawns. Like, my rook can potentially hold back his passed pawns, but a solitary knight can't. So, because the knights, they just don't have great mobility, while the rooks can see whole files. So, he goes here, creating a love for the king, and already you can tell how sharp of an endgame it is. It's already pretty much back to a draw, and I'm up 40 minutes on the clock. So I check him, and now go to b8, and I realize, wait a minute, I'm just going to get this pawn. And then I'm like, okay. So he attacks my pawn, and now I do not want to lose mine. So I went a3. a4 is better, but I thought a3 made a lot of sense. And he guards the pawn. Pretty much, I trade off rooks now, because I'm like, now what's going to happen is I am going to go here and here. I'm going to win the pawn. I'm going to push this. His knight has to stay back and guard it, and my king is just going to keep these pawns here, and eventually we're going to both sacrifice our knight for some pawns. So he brings his knight over. I start pushing. I attack. He pushes it forward, sacrificing the pawn. Didn't have a choice. He's going to lose it anyways. And now I've got it down to where it is 2 pawns versus 2 pawns. Exactly what I'm looking for. So king h4. I'm just looking to bring my king over to the king side so that after his king moves, I will be able to get his pawns. And here I thought for a while, and I was really debating between two moves here, which is king h5 and knight c5. So here is what I calculated. I calculated, okay, if I go here and then he goes here, am I able to stop the pawn? So what I was thinking in my head is here, here. And I'm like, if I were to take here, he goes here. But then I saw that suddenly after I go here, I can't stop the pawn. So I see all this, and then I see that line and I'm concerned, and I'm just like, wait a minute, what if I need this one extra little tempo? So I'm like, I can just go knight c. Oh, I can just go knight c5. So when the king moves, now I bring my king up. And the difference is that now if he tries and pushes these pawns, here, takes, here, here, I arrive with plenty of time. So just the difference, these little subtleties in the endgame, which I picked up on. He goes here, I check him, win a pawn, offer a draw, and he accepts. And it's not a win in the tournament, but you know, I can't be displeased. He's still a 1900. Like, he's still an he's a candidate master, extremely strong player, and it was a fun game. No, it was a fun end game. I played it all almost instantly, so sorry if there's not much depth to this because I just played mostly an intuitive end game. But yeah, pretty much I just played the end game around like the principles of like activity matters a lot more than material, and there are some things I need to take into consideration. And yeah, I managed to get the draw, and I ended the tournament with 2.5 out of 5 points. And I will be uploading a video tomorrow just about my final thoughts, the results from the tournaments, the rating I gained, and my plans moving forward. So make sure to stick around and check that. And if you're seeing this, you're awesome. Have a great day.